November 9th meeting. Got it. All right, welcome to the November 9th meeting of the El Sobrante Municipal Advisory Council. This is a council which is advisory to the Board of Supervisors of Contra Costa County. And we can start off by taking a roll call. Why don't you go ahead, Redger?
Okay, I'll start off. Chair Thomas Slang,
Here.
George Cleveland,
I'm here.
Suzanne Boudreau,
We're gonna get you on that.
It's-
Boudreaux.
It's Sue.
Boudreaux.
Sue.
Sue Boudreaux.
Sue Boudreaux.
John,
Sue
doesn't
Boudreaux.
this remind you of Barbara trying to pronounce Chief Gage's last name?
Jim Herman,
Yeah, present.
Dr. Melinda McLean,
Here,
Mickey Norris,
here.
Tom Owens,
Here.
Shirley Rosenthal Winston, and Emily Whelan. All right, so it seems that from the core members, only Sue is absent.
So Will texted me saying that he wouldn't be on until 7:15 because of our presentation. So he will be on. He's getting his babysitter situated.
Okay. That's
Okay, so looks like we're good for a quorum if necessary. And we can start off with the treasurer's report.
So we have 3,000. We haven't used any of our funds. And I think that just a quick comment for next year, maybe we can think about how we want to use those. I know that other Macs are using them for someone who's taking minutes. There's also using them for other kind of items. So I think that we haven't used them this year, and it's just worth noting.
Okay, good idea. So our first item is to approve minutes of the August 10th meeting, which you, Edgar, so kindly sent around. Is there any discussion of the minutes before making a motion to approve?
It's the other way
Anything
around.
to correct?
It's the other way around. You make the motion, then you talk about it. So I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second,
And then we have
Okay.
discussion.
All right. Any discussion of the minutes? Okay, so if there's no discussion of the August 10th minutes, we can go for a vote. All raise your hands if you approve of the August 10th minutes. So Tom Owens, do you approve? Mickey?
Tom Owens
Yes.
is raising his
I
hand.
do.
Okay, so it looks like we have a unanimous approval. So August 10th minutes are approved. So
Yeah, Tom Owens's hand was up. It's just his mountain background was swallowing his arm whole. That's all.
all right, and we'll start off with our presentations. So Supervisor Joya will provide some county updates.
Great. So we just had an election, and so our elections office is in the midst of continuing to count ballots. And I sent out an email, which you are all on my email list, I think, that clarified where we're at. And I think it's just important for process. So there were about 230,000 ballots that were tallied and counted by Tuesday night. I think it's important to note those are not all the ballots that have been cast, because now over 90%, 95% of the ballots cast now are mail ballots, with 5 to 10% of the votes cast at polling places. That is the new norm. So what was counted on Tuesday night, of those 200, and pull it up here. I'm gonna pull up my my e-blast, which sort of summarizes this. Of the 230,000 ballots that were cast or tallied, I should say, about 185,000 of those were right here, let me pull it. Yeah, but 185,000 of those, 195,000, excuse me, or 85% of those were mail ballots. Only about 33,000 of those were election day precinct ballots, and about 1,000 of those were voting early in person. So that was about a 32.7% turnout. And the elections office assumes, their prediction is that the turnout will be around 50%. That means there's still 18% of the registered voters, approximately, who've cast ballots that are being received and will be counted. What was posted on Tuesday night were pretty much all the mail ballots that came in by early Monday morning, plus the precinct in-person votes on Tuesday night. That's what made up the 230,000. There were thousands of ballots dropped off on Monday and Tuesday, including many at the polling sites, which are not counted because they require signatures to be verified. So tomorrow afternoon, the elections office will post an update that will have mail ballots that were received pretty much from Monday through Thursday, counting as many of them as they can. And all mail ballots had to have been postmarked by November 8th and received by November 15th. So the elections office will continue to count these ballots through November 15th and won't certify an election till after that time. That is why these very close congressional races around California are not being finalized, because ballots are still being counted, mail ballots, and still coming in and through November 15th. So as I say, there could be another up to 100,000 ballots counted before this is all done. What are the results of elections? The county clerk was selected. Kristen Connolly was elected to be our new county clerk. Pleasant Hill Council member Ken Carlson was elected to the Board of Supervisors from Concord to take Karen Mitchoff's place. If you're looking, there were some very close elections. For example, for the third seat on the Pinole City Council, there's a 29 vote difference between Norma Martinez Rubin, who's an incumbent, and let me see here. I'm just pulling all of this up so I can be accurate with all of you. Should have it all in front of me. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, in Pinole, there's like so I'm just going to highlight a couple of the close races. So it looks like, yeah, 29 vote difference between Debbie Long and Norma Martinez Rubin. In Richmond, Council member Eduardo Martinez has a 900 vote lead over Sean Dunning in second, followed closely after that by Nat Bates. It is likely, highly likely, that Eduardo Martinez will be elected mayor. It's hard to see that 900 vote difference overcome. Out in the El Sobrante Valley Hilltop District, Sohaila Bana won by is ahead by a very large margin, so she will be elected to the Richmond City Council representing the El Sobrante Hilltop area. And many of you know Sohaila. There is a close race in the Iron Triangle. Doria Robinson, who's the executive director of Urban Tilth, has a 50-vote lead over Corky Bouzet. Given the small number of ballots in that district, I think well, we don't know. There's a good chance she may hold that lead and be elected, but we don't know for certain. And then in the district that represents Point Richmond, the Santa Fe neighborhood, and Fairmead, part of Hilltop Fairmead, Andrew Butt has about 160 vote lead over Cesar Zepeda. Also, probably a lead that will be hard to overcome, but a slim possibility that Cesar Zepeda could overtake it. But that's where things are now. The two certain results are Eduardo Martinez, I think, is mayor, and Sohail Habana on the council. So that's just a little background for everyone. And so that's the election update. The Board of Supervisors on Tuesday received an update on our Measure X funding allocations. And the fire chief did talk about the implementation of the wildfire hand crews who have been doing work now that the rains have started. That summer season of work has ended, but we did get an update on all of that. We are hoping to have an update to the MAC again, to have not again, but update to the MAC. Yes, again on the road diet issue, the San Pablo Dam road diet bike lane issue. I think we're getting some more updates, but we do want to take that to you again shortly. And of course, tonight we really want to focus on the general plan for your input, because this is a good opportunity for you to provide some further input to the county, to Will Nelson, who will give a presentation later. So I'll keep my presentation short to that. And if there's any questions, we can otherwise just move on.
Okay, so any questions for Supervisor Joya from the board, the council? If there are no questions from the council, any general questions from the audience? In that case, Supervisor Joya, thank you so much for the presentation, and congratulations on another successful election.
Got it.
Okay, so the next presentation is the Sheriff's Office Space Station Commander, Lieutenant Mark Rodriguez. Lieutenant Rodriguez, we're ready for you.
Hi, good evening. I'm joining you guys from the patrol car away at training this week. I'll start off with the reports for the month of October. El Sobrante area generated 761 calls for service. Of those 761 calls for service, we generated 72 reports. The select crime trends is trending downward rather significantly. For the month of August, we had 27 select crimes. The month of September, we saw 22, and for the month of October, we saw 12. The biggest decrease in those across the board is in property crimes. So thefts of all kinds, the auto burglaries, petty thefts, residential burglaries have all decreased. With that being said, we are entering the holiday season, and we do anticipate to see package thefts. So what we ask is, if you see suspicious activity, whether it's people following the delivery drivers or delivery services, and then also just anyone approaching, whether it's your residence or neighbor's residence, thereafter deliveries have been made. And then where you can, try and schedule deliveries for a time that somebody would actually be at the residence. Other than that, we continue to work with the code enforcement. We've been towing some recreational vehicles after working with the owners, both in giving them warnings and making sure that they're aware that they can't have them on the roadways, and making appropriate accommodations for them. And there's still funding that's been set aside that code enforcement has, that was set aside by the county specifically for that purpose, due to the health risks that those pose if they're not up to current standards as far as the maintenance goes. So we have towed some of those relatively recently off of the Dam Road area. And then the same goes for just abatement of some of the properties. I believe I mentioned to some of you recently that there was a recreational vehicle that was on a property off of Hillcrest, and that was abated recently. So hopefully we're seeing a decrease in calls for service up there. That particular individual generated as calls for service as he tended to harass people that were using the area to hike and for lawful purposes. Other than that, that's all I have at this time. Is there any questions for me?
Okay, any questions for Lieutenant Rodriguez from the board?
I have a question.
Just a second, we're just for council members first. Any questions?
Okay, no problem.
Council members? Okay, in that case, Laura, please go ahead.
Well, I joined tonight with a particular issue, so I just need to know if I missed this. Officer Rodriguez, are you with CHP or Sheriff's Office?
Sheriff's Office, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Because the issue that I need to talk about is something that I would appreciate you hearing and probably Charles Thomas as well. But I can wait if you're still going to be around later on.
The CHP is next. It depends if you have a CHP
Okay.
or
That's
or
both,
sheriff. Yeah,
actually both jurisdictions.
you should probably ask Lieutenant Rodriguez.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm more than willing to. I'll be on either way. So yeah, I'm more than happy to answer.
okay, that sounds great. So I live on a Mitchell Way, 1080 Mitchell Way, have so for the last 35 years. We are experiencing a lot of speeding cars that are coming from a particular home. This home, which is 1107 Mitchell Way, has called the Sheriff's Department numerous times about this family who are also loud, obnoxious, bullying, blocking the street when people want to get by, having fights, just all kinds of stuff. And neighbors have repeatedly called, and officers have shown up and had conversations with the family. The latest incident of the speeding, I know that CHP jurisdiction, and the Sheriff's Department would be other things like disturbances and noise. Is that correct so far?
Correct, but if it's something we can address, particularly if we on-view it, we'll address it. But yeah, we can always work on those issues as well. But yeah, typically the traffic related matters are CHP.
Okay, and I had called both jurisdictions and had conversations and found out that one of my options is potentially, because I am representing a number of people, including several neighbors who've had to jump out of the way as these cars fly by. I mean, literally, they just floor it. All the way down to at least the intersection of Mitchell Way and Allview. Mitchell Way is a dead end. And they come from near the dead end and fly by. Anyway, I have told by one of the officers with whom I spoke at CHP and one at the Sheriff's Office that it's possible that a uniform presence contacting the family, which none of us want to do because they're not neighbor friendly or friendly neighbors. And we don't want to put ourselves in this situation of bringing up these issues in a way that you would normally take that first step as approaching somebody, very friendly way, say, we're having this issue, what can we do to work it out? Not going to happen with this family, but possibly a uniform presence to speak for us and say there are neighbors who are having these issues, and just be able to have that conversation and let them know that we have collectively complained.
So I think that, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think that now that you've made contact with Lieutenant Rodriguez, perhaps Lieutenant Rodriguez can make his email.
Yes.
And then it looks like there could be potentially a very productive discussion about how to proceed.
Yep.
But thank you for letting us all know of your situation, and it's something we can all sympathize with. But I think, between Lieutenant Rodriguez and I don't know who the CHP representative is going to be this evening. I think they can both make their emails available to you, and then you can arrange a conversation with them.
That would be great. Okay,
Yeah.
so the CHP rep,
Yeah, this is
can put-
Lieutenant Rodriguez. I'll go ahead and, I'll put my email in the chat, and I have no objection to doing that. And I agree, that's probably the best course of action based on what you're saying. So I'll put it in the chat to you, and we'll move forward from there.
thank you to Alexandra Buckner, who also says she can confirm everything I'm saying because she lives on the same street and I haven't met her.
Well, thank you thank you for bringing this up, and you know, it's a good connection with our law
Thanks.
enforcement
Yes,
reps.
please leave me your emails if you want to continue talking to me. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
And, are there any further questions for Lieutenant Rodriguez?
Yes, Thomas, there are two. There's Mana Nazari and Matt. I'm going to mispronounce your last name, Matt. I'm going to say Spar. Am I close? I was close.
Okay,
Thumbs
Mana,
up.
would you like to go?
Yes, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Mana Nazari. I live on Appian Knoll Court, which is a cul-de-sac with about 22 townhomes in El Sobrante. And our neighbor from the back of the house, which we are only apart by a short fence, they have moved in a while back, and they have numerous parties that are really, really loud and disturbing, and they go on for hours. Their last party was on Saturday, right before Halloween, and they started the music with their live DJ. DJ and live music or whatever it was, but it was super loud. That it started at 9 o'clock and it went until 3:30 in the morning. I called the Contra Costa Police Department several times and asked them if they could please stop by and let them know that it's getting really late. And their noise was so loud that all the way in my walk-in closet, all the way in the back of my bathroom, I could hear them. We could not even hear our TV, let alone being able to sleep. And I work in a hospital. I'm a healthcare worker, and I'm a physical therapist, and I have to work with critically ill patients. And if I have to, and I work lots of weekends and holidays, and if I have to stay up until 3:30 in the morning and then wake up again at 5 o'clock to go to work, I find myself not being able to concentrate and possibly making mistakes. So the officer that we contacted told us that there are no noise ordinance in Contra Costa County, including El Sobrante. So all they could do was to give them a friendly reminder to turn the music down, which they did not do. At one point, I opened the window and I shouted out, please, it's like 1 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock, turn it down. And they didn't care at all. So I am wondering if there's any way that the city of El Sobrante can adapt a noise ordinance, such as the city of Pinole, and something that can be done about this. Because if this goes on again, I get migraine headaches from this, and it really affects my quality of life, my day-to-day living. Because if you cannot sleep just because the music is so loud, you can't even hear yourself talking. You won't, I don't think I can survive like this. It's coming New Year's and Christmas and all these events, and they have quinceañera, whatever these parties are.
So thank you so much, Mana. This might be a good opportunity for Lieutenant Rodriguez to reply.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I want to apologize that we weren't able to resolve the issue for you. I agree. It's very frustrating when you have disturbances like that taking place. I'll send you my email, and I'll look into the calls from that Saturday and find out why we weren't able to resolve that for you. But going forward, I'll have my contact information for you as well if this becomes a continual problem, so we can make sure that we're addressing that address specifically. But again, I apologize that we weren't able to resolve it. You had to go to work tired the next day. Very frustrating.
Appreciate it.
And Mana, let me just say, this is John Joya. You don't need to have a noise ordinance to address nuisance issues. Noise ordinances can be, actually really hard to enforce as well. So I just want to let you know, noise ordinances aren't required to address those kinds of situations. And I think the sheriff's office will attempt to be responsive. If there's a nuisance activity going on and you can document that it's regular and it's potentially a nuisance, I mean, I think there's ways for law enforcement to respond. And El Sobrante, just so you know, is not a city, it's an unincorporated area, it's part of the county. So any ordinance would apply to all the unincorporated areas around the county.
And I have another suggestion, if I may. I'm the vice chair of the MAC business area. If you know the address, you probably can find out if they are the owners of the property or if they are renters. And if they're renters, you probably can take a little time, do a little search the county, the assessor's records, find out who the owner is. And maybe a group of you can just send not an email, but an actual letter through the snail mail and say, hey, your tenants are a nuisance. They are not abiding by societal norms, however you want to phrase it. Basically, you just say they're keeping us all night with their parties and it's unacceptable. And these are your tenants. And I say this because I had a situation like that with my mother's property. She lives in Richmond, which is, of course, city. Had a neighbor behind her that was just, well, basically what it boiled down to is we found out who the landlord was and said, your tenants are doing A, B, C, and D. Oh, by the way, this is what the property looked like before they arrived, and here's what it looks like now. And the landlord had no idea. They were just collecting the rent money. So that's another option. And of course, what John said is true about El Sobrante. It's unincorporated, so it doesn't have a city structure, which is why we as a MAC kind of exist, because we sort of represent, well, a facsimile of a governing structure in our advisory council to Supervisor Joya.
Okay, thank you, George. And Mana, if you look at the chat, Lieutenant Rodriguez's email is in the chat. So, you know, you might want to copy that and then, you know, send him a message and see if you can start moving forward. And I'm very sorry that you're having this problem.
Absolutely, I'll do that. Thanks everyone for your empathy. I will contact Lieutenant Rodriguez, and their address is 880 Appian Way, and I believe they're the owners. But thank you. I'll definitely look into that.
Okay.
Oh, can I
Thank
say
you.
one more thing to her? I would like to put my email out there for, I'm sorry, the woman who just spoke. I can't remember your name.
Mana.
I'm going to put my email out there too. Feel free to contact me because I've been through a similar situation and I'm very proactive in this neighborhood. So maybe we can put our heads together. I like to support
Absolutely.
you.
Thanks, Laura. I appreciate it.
Sure, no
Jim?
problem.
Jim Herman, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I had a question and a comment that the lack of a noise ordinance, and this is more addressed to John Joya, but John, that's come up before, and I've called, there's a church at the end of Olinda that is a Brazilian church, which are nice people, but they have parties very much like Mana's neighbor has parties. Unfortunately, they go until very late at night. I've called the sheriff a number of times. They're always very, very responsive, but they tell me there's no noise ordinance. There's nothing they can do. They can go there and just comment to them, could they please turn it down? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So it's an ongoing problem. It's the nuisance thing is a different issue from a legal context of you have to prove it's regular and have to, Mana has more of that than I would have because the church doesn't have parties all the time, but it has very large events that take place with a lot of people. So the lack of a noise ordinance bothers me. And I realize that it affects the whole unincorporated area of the county, but it is something that lacks any enforcement capability.
So this might be for future reference, a good discussion to have.
And why don't you raise it to Will Nelson in the general plan discussion? Why don't you ask Will, because you know some of that could potentially be under planning. So why don't you make it a question also, Will Nelson? I know we want to move on to these presentations. We have some really substantial presentations, and I know when individual cases come up, we want to resolve them and then do a follow-up and try and then because we have a major presentation on the general plan coming up here.
Right, and there's one more question, which is Matt Starr. Question or comment?
Yes. I also live on Appian Knoll Court and can verify what Ms. Nazari said. And my research, we've run into the same, there's no enforcement thing, but state law under the Health and Safety Code says, I wrote it down here, that all Californians are entitled to a peaceful and quiet environment without the intrusion of noise, which may be hazardous to their health or welfare. It seems like we should all have this, and our neighbors in Pinole have an ordinance. They have something that can be enforced. We don't. It seems like a glaring.
Well, this is a good point, and I think as Supervisor Joya pointed out, we're going to have a presentation from the Department of Conservation and Development where this can be brought up to the person who is working specifically on the long-range plan. So your point is well taken, and I think we as we know, we do have these presentations coming, so we need to save enough time for them. So we should probably move on to our next speaker, who's Battalion Chief Thomas from the Contra Costa Fire.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good. You mind if I share my screen? Thank you for having me. Seems like it's been a while, but I know everybody's been busy. Host disabled participant share screen sharing.
You should have access now, Chief.
All right. All right, there we go. Can everybody see the screen? Okay, this is from Chief Bouchard, dated November 8th. Just a little update on Contra Costa Fire. It's been a real busy time with the annexation of East County and now the contract negotiations with Pinole. But one of the things he wanted to note to everyone was your communication center. Late last month, the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch conveyed to our dispatch center that it has been approved as an emergency medical dispatch center of excellence. And that means that now it has the distinguished honor of being the 311th emergency medical dispatch accredited center in the world, which is a big accomplishment. Accreditation is the highest distinction given to emergency communication centers, exemplifying our staff and community's commitment to rigorous quality processes and continuous improvement. And so that was a big thing. Operations update. In spite of the welcome reprieve from more typical fire weather, fall has been exceptionally busy period for firefighters with 142 multi-unit responses in September alone. These included 14 working residential structure fires, 3 working commercial fires, and 17 major vehicle accidents that require rescue. And as you all know, the 80 corridor here is big for accidents with rescue. We're always out here. I came out one night and was dispatched to an incident. I get on the freeway at 80 in El Portal and multi-vehicles everywhere. And they said, no, Chief, we've been here for a minute. Your incident is further down. So I go down further down the highway. I see 2 more of my units down there and 2 Amazon trucks on fire, fully involved. And they're like, no, we got this. Your accident is further down. And so it's like 4 accidents all at the same time, about 2 o'clock in the morning. So very busy time. So we still encourage everyone to be careful, look twice before you change lanes, watch your speed, stuff like that. Now that it's raining, even be even more careful.
Well, you got it all.
Okay. Fire weather update. You guys all witnessed the rains that have come, so that's helped tremendously. And we've actually, Supervisor Joya mentioned, Crew 12 is now stood down, and but they're on standby in case anything changes. But we're moving forward into winter now, which is really good. Hazmat update. Hazmat program training tempo has been high this fall as we work to maintain full staffing for this critically important program. Several firefighters completed their initial hazmat training program late last month. Additionally, 6 current program members participated in an FBI and Cal OSHA weapons of mass destruction training in Monterey. The instruction included 1 day of classroom instruction by the FBI, followed by a day of possible real-world scenarios. An additional 30 Confire Hazmat program members participated in a local weapons of mass destruction training at our training campus right here in Concord, in your own backyard. The Marine program update, our district's extensive coastline, along with many inland waterways, both natural and man-made, present numerous waterborne risks we seek to mitigate with our marine and water rescue programs. Last month, 24 of our Marine program boat operators trained in-house with National Association of State Boating Law Administrators, instructors to hone their skills, bolster staffing ahead of possible reassignment of fireboat resources to eastern portion of the district. We also trained 4 additional members for our Swift Water Rescue Program at a 2-day course instruction in Coma. And I've done that a number of times. That's always really fun and really, really good training. Paramedic program update, an industry-wide challenge. Paramedics remain in short supply, requiring constant attention and creativity in attracting, training, and retaining these skilled medical professionals who undergird our ability to provide advanced life support EMS district-wide. So we're always trying to recruit paramedics so that we can provide advanced life-saving skills. But all the departments are having the same issue, so they're being pulled in a bunch of different directions. As a result of our ongoing efforts, 2 firefighters completed their year-long training process recently and are awaiting accreditation. Our numerous efforts in this regard this fall also included sponsoring an additional 8 firefighters in a paramedic training program being managed by an outside vendor and hiring another vendor to work with us to explore providing paramedic training in-house so that we can have our own academy, paramedic academy. A fire prevention update, the district attended the Antioch Big Truck event last month with Dozer 220 and Hauler Hazmat 86, a Type 6 wildland fire engine, and one of our brand new Rivian 4x4 electric vehicle pickup trucks. And if you haven't seen these things in person, they're absolutely amazing, and I'm still learning about them. The first electric all-wheel drive vehicles in the county and the first such vehicles delivered to a first responder agency anywhere. Our 2 Rivian trucks have been assigned support roles in the Fire Prevention Bureau and our training division, where their potential for further fire service deployment is being evaluated. This fall, the 2 EVs will be outfitted for emergency response and incident command functionality, including fire markings, radios, lights, and sirens. Measure X funded was mentioned earlier by Supervisor. Measure X funded wildfire hardening program for residents update. The Fire Prevention Bureau continues to work with Crew 12 to assign Measure X funded wildfire mitigation projects throughout the county as Crew 12 transitions its primary focus to mitigation work later this month. So right now they're on a stand down, but they are still available. And then getting towards the end here, Pinot contract for fire protection services. The contracts were approved and executed by the city and district with the LAFCO application submitted for November 9th LAFCO meeting. We anticipate, and today's the 9th, and I have an update from Chief Bouchard on my phone. We anticipate approval from LAFCO at this meeting with an anticipated operational effective date of March 1st. And I'll quickly read what he just texted me as the meeting began. Feel free to share with El Sobrante Mac. LAFCO approved our contract for service with Pinole Fire Station 74, planned to be reopened on March 1st, 2023, with all Pinole Fire Department employees becoming Confire employees on the same date. Confire will be the fire department serving Pinole effective 3/1/2023. 5-year contract with a 5-year extension unless parties agree to terminate at 5 years. And then he also texts $2 million of annually recurring Measure X funds will be used to support the contract and reopening of Fire Station 74. And then last but not least, we do have an academy going at this time, Academy 58, 32 members. My class was large at 30. 32 members is the largest academy we've ever had to this date. 20-week course, and they are set to graduate February 15, 2023. And that's the end of my report, and happy to take on any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief Thomas. I have a question, and it's something that Sue Boudreau also pointed out in the chat, which is what are you folks doing in terms of establishing a pipeline to our educational institutions in the county, such as the high schools and the community colleges? I do some work at UCSF School of Dentistry, and one of the things we do to try and get a broader range of entrance to our dental school is to have these outreach programs to universities and try to generate a pipeline sort of pre-matriculation. So I'm wondering what programs the fire department has for those.
Very good question. There's a number of, I won't say a number of programs, but the main vein that we're using to get information out and to educate people about Contra Costa Fire is mainly through our PIO and our web and our online-based systems, our web page, our Instagram, all the social media type items. But I had the same concern a couple of years ago, and along with our former fire chief, I established a recruitment team for Contra Costa Fire, and we traveled all up and down California, speaking at high schools, putting on events at employment fairs and things like that. But right now, the main and the team kind of fell apart. My main concern was, if I could take off this uniform right now, my main concern at the time was we were having 8 or 9 classes where there were no minorities and no women. And so I was really trying to be a face out there so that we can attract more minorities and women and educate people about Contra Costa Fire. But right now, the team is kind of falling apart, so to speak, because we have so many new people and we have to get them on board. And so we're sharing information with them. But right now we're working with Steve Hill, our PIO officer, as well as all of our social media outfits.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I think I misrepresented Sue Boudreau's question. Sue, you had a question about fire hardening?
I can answer, let me save some time. I can answer that. I saw her question. How do we access Measure X funded hardening program? I'm moving this along because I know we have a long presentation tonight. So we got an update at the Board of at the Board of Supervisors yesterday about this. This is the Measure X program. And the fire district is working on a program that for home hardening that would be about $2,000 per home. And so they're working on the details of that now. And then a separate program also for defensible space grant program for low-income households that would be $1,500 per home. And then also working at more what's called Firewise community programs, which would be $5,000 per project. So the details are being worked out. And when we have more, we'll give you a presentation.
Okay, thank you. And finally, one question from Tom Owens, who has his hand raised, and then we'll move on to the next item.
Yes, Chief Thomas, I was wondering if you could give us an update on the discussions with Rodeo Hercules.
I can do that. Because that's something that the board's been involved with. We were going to move forward with Rodeo Hercules. Their board didn't want to at this time. They just had elections yesterday for their fire board. I think we're going to revisit discussions with them. So there's no current discussions with them. So they would have, it would also be a process through LAFCO. And so right now there's no discussions ongoing, and I think we're just politically looking for the right time to re-engage.
Okay, thank you. I think in the spirit of moving to our keynote presentations, I'll just ask if we have the California Highway Patrol here. I don't see Officer Laviste.
No, I don't see him either, and he sent me an email just to remind that there's no public information officer assigned to El Sobrante. He usually attends the MAC meeting occasionally when he's on his day shifts. I'm reading the email he sent me. And when he's assigned on the day shifts, but usually when the MACs are in the evening, like the El Sobrante MAC, he tries to jump on during his free time. But he said to share his email, which I did. And if there's any questions regarding traffic related concerns, to please don't hesitate to send him an email.
So Ms. Laura, I think that
Yes.
you can find
I got it.
Officer these days. So yeah.
I wrote it
Okay,
down. Thank you.
So in that case, we'll move to our keynote presentation. So the conservation and development presentation, Will Nelson, but Supervisor Joya is going to provide a brief introduction prior to that.
Yeah, I will be very brief. I know you've had an update before, and we wanted to check in again because there's been ongoing work with the major revisions in the county general plan. First time we've done this in about 30 years. As we've said, new policies on health, new policies on sustainability, new policies on environmental justice and on economic development, plus updating the community profiles for each of the unincorporated areas and the general plan and land use and zoning maps for each area. So I think tonight we wanted to focus on the policies for El Sobrante. One thing to bear in mind, a lot of the major policies in the general plan will apply to all unincorporated areas. Our environmental justice and health and sustainability policies don't need to be spelled out in every unincorporated area because they are countywide and apply to all of them. So I don't know if Will may be focusing tonight on the areas that specifically apply to El Sobrante, but also maybe Will can chat a little bit about some of the more general policies that would apply everywhere, including El Sobrante. So I'll just leave it at that and turn it over to Will. And thank you we appreciate. I just wanted to add on the fire service, and I just wanted to emphasize on the Pinole that the comment about the new station is the Pinole Valley station, which will be really important because that Pinole Valley station does respond into El Sobrante.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you. Will?
Supervisor Joya and Chair Lang and members of the council and the public for having me tonight. Excuse me. I'm going to actually hold on one sec. Excuse me while I clear my throat there. I am going to share my screen and give you a presentation on the general plan update. Then I'll be happy to take questions after that. Again, my name is Will Nelson. I'm a principal planner with the Department of Conservation and Development, and I am the project manager for Envision Contra Costa 2040. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone is seeing the, oops, hold on one second. Okay, there we go. Hopefully everyone is seeing the presentation. I think I see Edgar nodding there. Okay. In December of 2017, the Board of Supervisors directed our department to update the County General Plan, Zoning Code, and Climate Action Plan project we now call Envision Contra Costa 2040. So we're in the very long process of updating those three documents, and here they are listed. And there will be a fourth document prepared, an environmental impact report that analyzes the impacts of the policy and regulatory changes in these three documents. For those of you who are not familiar with what a general plan is, it is often referred to as the Constitution for local land use planning. Every city and county in California is required to have a general plan, and it is the highest land use planning document in each jurisdiction. So all of the land use decisions have to be consistent with the jurisdiction's adopted general plan. And it is supposed to be a practical and pragmatic, but also a visionary document, because they usually go out, around 20 years or so. So they look to the future. They aspire to where the community wants to be from a development standpoint. And one of the big challenges there is balancing anticipated growth with conservation and maintaining the quality of life over the life of that the community's quality of life over the term of that general plan. So it's an important document because it does address so many aspects of our lives. So where housing is built and jobs and what types, urban design, community character, those sorts of things, public facilities, so where police and fire stations are, parks, flood control, infrastructure, that kind of thing, roadway design and construction. So how wide the roads are going to be, for example, risks to property and people from disasters. So the general plan addresses earthquake, flood, fire hazards, all sorts of things, hazardous materials, and then resource conservation, protection of open spaces and sensitive habitats, things along those lines. So we're updating the general plan now because it's about to turn 32. It'll be 32 in January. So it's pretty long in the tooth for a policy document. A lot has changed in the world of planning since 1991 when it was adopted, January of 1991. Because it was adopted then, it really reflects 1980s thinking when it comes to planning. And back in the 80s, we were still in the mode of building sprawling single-family subdivisions and separating land uses. And nowadays, we've gone back to basics in planning, more density, mixed uses, public transit, not being auto dependent, the way cities were built basically, prior to World War II. And so there's there's the planning field, the state of the practice has changed quite a bit, but there's also a lot of legislation. I've listed just a few here. SB 375, the Sustainable Community Strategy. So if you've ever heard of Plan Bay Area, it's an outgrowth of that legislation. We have legislation about climate change and adaptation. Of course, back in 1991, who had heard of climate change? People were just starting to talk about it really back then. SB 1000 related to environmental justice. The county is required to begin righting a lot of the wrongs that have happened when it comes to planning, when it comes to neglect of communities, disenfranchisement over the last 70 years or so, actually more, maybe about 100 years when it comes to planning. Always, I'm sure you're hearing in the news, there are laws being passed. Some get more notoriety than others, but laws related to housing, new laws related to wildfire and public safety. Those have just been happening, of course, in the last few years with all these wildfire situations. And then there are a lot of plans out there that didn't even exist or were significantly different when the general plan was adopted. I've just listed a couple here. So we also have to be consistent with other planning documents that affect the county, like the land use plan for the Delta or local hazard mitigation plan, things like that. So the general plan is made up of several chapters called elements. On the left column, you see the elements in the existing general plan. And in the right column, the elements in the new general plan. And so you see a lot of them are the same. A couple of them have been combined, but then there's one in particular, a new one called Stronger Communities. And when the board directed us to update the general plan, they instructed us to weave 4 themes throughout the document, and they're economic development, environmental justice, sustainability, and community health. And so the Stronger Communities element, the other ones, I'll go back to that slide, pretty straightforward: land use, transportation, housing, open space, pretty straightforward. The Stronger Communities is really where these 4 new themes are going to that's where their home is going to be. There are goals and policies. The general plan, these chapters are made up of narrative text and pictures and graphs and graphics, but the meat and potatoes is goals, policies, and actions. So goals, what the county wants to achieve. Policies are sort of the rules that guide decision-making to get us there. And then actions are the sort of the to-do list, the things that the concrete things the county will do or implement to get us there. And so these four themes kind of go, they can be found, or they touch on many of those different chapters, but they still needed a home. So that's where that stronger communities element comes in. It's where these four themes really kind of have their narrative text background, and then just the goals, policies, and actions that don't fit cleanly into any of the other elements. So anyone who's ever interacted with the general plan has probably interacted with the land use map. It shows the uses, uses of land throughout the county. So in this map, all the grayed out areas are the city. So we don't have jurisdiction there. They each have their own general plan. But all the places in color are the county's planning jurisdiction. And as you can see, for the most part, it's these various shades of green and blue, and that's open space, parks and recreation, agricultural land, watersheds, things of that nature. It's only the yellows and browns, reds, purples. Those are the urban land uses, and so some of them really pop out, like the refineries. Those big purple areas. North Richmond, there's a big area of heavy industrial land there, currently designated heavy industrial, and this is the existing map, not the proposed map. But then you do see the yellows and the browns, and those are the various types of housing, ranging from low density single family all the way up to your higher density multifamily designations. And then the reds, which are even harder to see because there's really not that much commercial land designated in the unincorporated county. And so the land use map for El Sobrante, this is the existing map, and there's actually a north and a south that I'll show you because the community doesn't really fit easily on one page and still be readable. So this is the existing land use map. Again, you see the kind of oranges, browns, yellows are the various types of housing, mostly single family, but there are some those darker sections of multifamily. You've got your commercial strips. You've got your mixed use areas that were designated that way about 10 years ago now, I want to say, along Appian and portion of San Pablo Dam Road. Here is the draft land use map for the same area. You'll see it's much simplified with mixed use basically up and down Appian and San Pablo Dam Road. The single family areas pretty much staying the same. Multifamily housing kind of maybe growing some. Part of this map, one of the things we've aimed to do is have it match reality in a lot of cases. So again, this aspirational part of how we want our communities to be in the future, but also reflecting what's on the ground today. So then we have the current land use map for the more southern part of El Sobrante here, and then the proposed map. And of course, I can keep going back to these during the discussion later if you'd like to. And then Supervisor Joya, I heard mention the community profiles. In the existing general plan, there's a section called policies for specific geographic areas. And so there is a section for El Sobrante that has a number of policies guiding development. In the new general plan, we're going to have these, they're called community profiles, and they're much spiffier, not just a list of policies, but as you can see here are just 3 of the pages. There's some background, some context describing the community. There are maps, the goals, the policies and actions are in here. There's demographic information you can see on the page on the left side. And a lot of this comes from the several community meetings that we had in El Sobrante all the way back in 2019, before the pandemic. I think we had 3 meetings there with the community. It got a lot of feedback that went into developing this, along with the existing general plan. It is an old document, but that doesn't mean there aren't parts that are still relevant. So there are policies being carried forward from the existing general plan into this new community profile. So then we move on to the.
By the way, I put the community profile. I'm putting the community profile link in the chat for folks that want to actually see the full profile. It's in the chat.
So then Zoning code. The zoning code is the second level or layer of land use regulation. It has to be consistent with the general plan by state law. If there's any inconsistency, the general plan is controlling. But the zoning code really implements the general plan. It gets into a more higher level of detail. So where the general, it's made up of zoning districts and a map that is very similar to the general plan map. Regulations that control physical development. So you have various zones, single family, multifamily, and commercial, industrial, and whatnot. They'll tell you what the permitted uses are, what permitting requirements there are, and then these specific site development standards like the parcel sizes, their dimensions, setbacks, height limitations. All those sorts of things are found in the zoning code, not in the general plan. And so then you see at the bottom where the general plan, it is more general. So it might designate a place as residential and have a density. The zoning code will come in and say, okay, well, that's going to be single family, it's going to be multifamily, the lots will be such and such size and shape. So it's more it's a finer grain than the general plan. The climate action plan is actually a relatively new document. And I should say the zoning code was adopted in 1947. It's never ever undergone a comprehensive update. So it's very evident in reading it that it's an old document. It doesn't reflect any contemporary planning practices. So the climate action plan is actually a newer document. It was adopted in December of 2015. The CAP is the county strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so while it is a new document, this is a ever and quickly evolving area of science and understanding. There are new laws, there are new targets in place that weren't from the state that weren't in place back in 2015, new reduction strategies. And we've also had a few years to work with this document and have learned its shortcomings. So we decided, well, we're updating the other two major planning documents. We should update this one as well, so everything is consistent. So then there's the environmental impact report. The California Environmental Quality Act requires us to prepare an EIR for a project like this. It'll analyze the impacts and include mitigation measures to reduce those impacts to, as they call them, less than significant levels, and describe feasible alternatives to the project if there are any. And then there are some public review periods. There'll be an initial 30-day period where the public will have the opportunity to tell the county what should be analyzed in the document in addition to what's required by statute. And then there will be at least a 45-day comment period on the draft EIR. And that's going to be coming out next year, probably around mid-year. So there will be opportunities for public comment then, but there are ongoing opportunities. So we have a website, envisioncontracosta2040.org. The link that Supervisor Joya put in the chat to the profile goes to that website. There are all kinds of documents there. The land use maps I showed are there, the draft community profiles, the goals, policies, and actions for all of Contra Costa County. So what's in the profile is specific to El Sobrante, but the majority of the document is the goals, policies, and actions that guide development and decision-making for the county as a whole. So all of those apply to all the communities in the county, the unincorporated communities. And then there's the subset in the profile that apply only to El Sobrante. So we had community meetings back in 2019, a bunch of them. We've continued to have them on Zoom in certain communities, MAC meetings, of course, like this one. And then, various county commissions and committees that we've been going to check in, to receive guidance from our elected and appointed decision makers, as well as the public. So I've listed a handful of them here. And then the website, you can go there and sign up for the mailing list, receive a notice when there's going to be major meetings or the release of a major document. All kinds of resources are on the website. You can submit photos there actually that may find their way into the final general plan. A lot of good things on the website. And here's that page, the documents page, where you'll find the draft community profiles, land use maps, goals, policies, and actions. All of our environmental justice work, which is substantial, is here, climate action plan. So a lot of good things to go and explore. So that really concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions y'all have.
you know what I'd like, because I really wanted to use this as a chance to get some real direct input tonight. So can you go to slide 11? Because I think it's really important to sort of to show the MAC here where these changes are, so that we can, because they haven't, they can go online, but I just think maybe it's the draft land use map, actually. So I would go to the next one. That's the south, which is the one, yeah. So that shows a lot of the dam road. So I think it's really important to sort of walk through just briefly the changes that you're making on the dam road and then on Appian Way with regard to land use, and also how you've changed the corridor of density. So sort of like what we did in North Richmond, where there was a lot of engagement, Will, on specifics and details. So can you just go through this and then the Appian Way map briefly? And can you start with the dam road? Maybe start with the yeah.
Okay.
That's where I think the greatest interest, starting on yeah.
Okay.
So that's showing from current to draft where the changes are, because you're also changing these density corridors as well.
Yeah. So unfortunately,
A little louder. Yeah. Good.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It of course would be easier if I could display these side by side, but yeah, as we walk through it here, kind of take a mental picture of these, going from west to east. So we've got the commercial area on the north side of San Pablo Dam Road, and then this M13, that's a mixed use area on the south side. And then we get into this sort of, checkerboard, all these different things. ML is multiple family low, MH multiple family high, OF is office, SH single family high. So you see that there's no cohesion here. It's just one different designation from one parcel to the next, or group of parcels, as you go down San Pablo Dam Road all the way out of town towards the reservoir. So what we aim to do is simplify all this by having a mixed use designation starting in the west and continuing. So I'm going to go back. So remember all that checkerboard there, the office, commercial, mixed use, it all becomes mixed use. So mixed use can offer any of these things, but it allows for housing. And something I didn't touch on, because it's a separate but parallel process. The county is one of those elements is the housing element, and it's the only element the county is required to update on a schedule. It's every 8 years, and we have to plan for a number that's given to us by the Association of Bay Area Governments. And this time around, it's 7,610 units that we have to plan for over the next 8 years, and we are looking countywide, leaving no stone unturned to find space for these units. So that major change is that more residential would be allowed along San Pablo Dam Road. Once you get past, I think you can probably see my cursor here. Once you get past here, it goes more back to the way things are, reflecting the densities that exist on the ground already, except for this mixed use area here that's new at the intersection of Valley View. But for the most part, these areas are not changing anything. They are just having a land use designation that translates the old one into the new one to reflect the density. And you can see here that MUL, mixed use low designation, is 0 to 30 units per acre. Then would we like to take questions on that, or should I move to the
Why don't you
Appian
cover
Way?
Appian Way and then we can take
Okay.
questions.
Okay, so here, pretty much the same thing. Well, let me look at this now. This one, it's even more incoherent along here. You just see all this smattering of commercial, the M12 mixed use designation, M11 mixed use designation, public and semi-public office, multifamily high density, multifamily low density. It's all over the place. So again, in an effort to simplify things and bring some cohesion, we would like to just change it to mixed use, all of it along the corridor there. And keep the residential areas generally the same. Again, just matching the development pattern on the ground today to the new designations that we're planning. So, and this, somewhat reflects what's already out there, that, these mixed use designations, there is policy language and direction in the general plan to enliven these corridors. When we had our community meetings, people said they wanted to have some more development along these corridors and breathe some life into the community. And so again, it's mixed use, low density, except for this stretch here where it's a little darker, mixed use medium. That is the next one up. That's 30 to 75 per acre. And I do want to talk about that, what the cap actually should be, but that reflects some higher density development that's already in these parcels here. So that's the general overview of it.
Okay, do you think we can go to questions, John, or do you have any?
Yeah, you should probably start with questions from the MAC first before going to the public questions.
Yeah, that's what we usually do. Looks like Sue has her hand up.
So you've just changed the colors rather than actually made any changes of designation at this point, I assume, right?
There's changes in some designations.
No, the colors are the changes in designation. So for the most part, it's like this RM. I'll show you so this SH, for example, single family high density. You can see if you look at the parcels that are in here, the parcels aren't the same, but the designation is. They're not the density doesn't match what's on the ground. So the reason this is a little more disjointed on the proposed map is we tried to look at this and say, okay, what's the actual density in here and match it to a new land use designation. But the mixed use is a definite change. The existing mixed use designations in El Sobrante, one of them allows up to 12 units per acre. The other two allow up to 8. That mixed use low allows up to 30. It's 0 to 30.
Does this clear the way potentially for revitalizing our commercial areas?
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea of the mixed use. Back about 10 years ago, go back to the old map, Will. You can see what happened about 10 years ago. The county started, I'm looking at what's commercial. We started changing some sites to mixed use. I'm trying to see where that is on here. Remember, Will, that started about 10 years ago.
One here, you can see says M13. So it's this dark gray.
Yeah.
And then this lighter gray, M11, and it's not even connected, it jumps over. And then up here's another one, M12, and that's this sort of intermediate gray in between those two. So those are the three.
And if you look at the red down below on the north side of the dam road by the creek, it's shown as commercial. Look at the new map. It's shown as mixed use. So all of that now gives property owners a greater flexibility to do commercial or residential or both together. So it allows residential in areas that previously only had commercial. And it makes it much more uniform along this corridor of downtown and Appian Way, which is a traditional strategy for getting more revitalization. To sort of San Pablo, a good comparison would be San Pablo Avenue and El Cerrito, where there is a lot of mixed use with ground level retail and then residential above that, sort of where my office is. I'm not saying it would be as high in terms of height, but the idea that both residential and commercial can be on the same parcel.
Which could be quite a bit more profitable, presumably, make it more attractive.
Yeah, it definitely gives property owners greater flexibility to develop both and brings people into commercial corridors who could then walk to local businesses and creates more customers for local businesses.
So I guess one thought that I have is that one would need to couple this with attracting certain types of businesses that would be attractive to residents. So from what I've seen, many of the applications for businesses in the downtown, have been for the auto shop, gas station type of facility. And really I think it would have to be resident restaurants, retail to really bring, add value for housing there.
I appreciate you mentioned that because I wanted to raise this question to Will. Because this is helpful for me because I have to advocate and vote on this, and obviously I want the plan to reflect community sort of beliefs here. So, Will, I think we want to look at policies that also limit the auto uses. Where is the best place to put that? In the community profile, or in fact, we may want to go to that community profile. I think to me, the policies there are really important. So rather than to read this small print, I actually have the document up. Should I open it and then just and then do a screen share of it? Yeah. Can I do a screen share?
You should have the ability.
Let's see. Yeah.
Green button at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay. I'm doing it. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
On my screen? So I'm going to scroll up to, I think this is really the heart of what we're trying to get input on today with some detail. And you've noted, and this is maybe where, so downtown El Sobrante plan land uses, and maybe Will getting input on this. We show here, there's a little discussion here about mixed use development is strongly encouraged, although all three districts allow projects that are entirely commercial as well. And the same with Appian Way. But so if we look under the San Pablo Dam Road mixed use area, we talk here about, this is the core of the downtown area. The intent is to create a more unified and vibrant district by creating a town square, improving the Dam Road, encouraging new multifamily residential, offices, retail, and mixed use. Is there a way in this area to sort of express, and I think that MAC members should take a look at this, to express a preference for the types of uses that are really more compatible. And I think this is the place, unless you suggest another place, to put the types of uses we would prefer to see in the Dam Road mixed use area, and in the there's more here on the Triangle mixed use, which of course is important as well. And there's been discussion of an arts district up in the Triangle mixed use. It seems that you've heard some of that. Is this in the process of being redrafted now, or should we give that input now?
It is. I'm seeing comments in the chat that it says a couple things in here that are inconsistent with what I just said. So the community profiles are the very first thing that we produced back in 2019, and so we do have to go back through them. We're in the process right now, in fact, of going through, now that we have all these years of development of the rest of the general plan, and we're updating them. So it does say some things here, like about the height limit and the maximum density that of course are not consistent with the land use map that I've been showing you. But Supervisor, yeah, to your point, I think if we scroll down further, there's a policies section for the community. And I actually thought there might have already been something in here about that, about, the auto uses, not allowing more of that. If we scroll down to the policies,
I mean, you talk here about 3, encourage and prioritize small and locally owned businesses, including markets offering healthier food choices. Local businesses should provide gathering spaces. A suggestion here would be,
after this one, after that.
Yeah. increase neighborhood park acreage, incorporate, let's see here. We do talk about the creek, conserve and restore portions. Yeah, I don't, here's what I would suggest is you've gotten a lot of public input. And is to redo this profile, and then we will send it out to the MAC ahead of time so they can read it, and then we can have a presentation just on these policies, so that the MAC and the community can be focused on, because they've given a lot of input over several meetings prior to this one. And I think taking that input, incorporating it so everyone has the newest draft, they can see it ahead of time and provide a meaningful public input to us at a future meeting.
So
Otherwise, what's going to happen is we're going to go on for an hour about everything, some of which may already be in here in the new draft. So, and they haven't seen this ahead of time. So I just think it would make sense to send it ahead of time and then get input.
So there won't be a new draft for a while. We've been working on the rest of the general plan, and we've come back now to the profiles. And we hadn't intended to actually make to publish a new profile before the rest of the general plan was published. So, and that's for all of the communities. So, you know, I think if we want to take this profile and you know, come back and maybe edit it, or say, you know, like policy 8, you know, we would prefer that it say, you know, this,
right,
policy 9, that. Now, a couple things I would point out, you see where there are numbers in parentheses, like 3-175 after number 7, those are things being carried forward from the existing general plan. Those are policy numbers from the existing general plan for El Sobrante. And there's also the zoning layer. And I think that in the zoning for El Sobrante, I don't think I'm losing my marbles here. There's somewhere where the auto uses are.
Yeah, I think these, let me just say, I think these policies and guidance are some of the most important language that's unique to a community. And I want to see them, and I know the committee would, before this goes to a vote. And
oh, yes.
So, yeah. So if I want to get the benefit of getting more community input into these, which doesn't have to be tonight, are you suggesting that we send this out to get input, and then you will revise it based on a lot of the input we will get from this document?
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting. And it's in the zoning. All of those auto uses they require a use permit. So there are none of them allowed by right in El Sobrante with the current
right.
zoning.
But I think the problem is people come in and buy property because they say, I can go get a discretionary permit.
Mm-hmm.
But if we truly want to say, we need to specify and prioritize the types of businesses in a policy, so that so that potential developers are on notice. I don't think we have any place where potential developers are on notice to see what are the preferences we're trying to see. Every developer, and I used to be a land use lawyer, will say, okay, I just need to go in and get a land use permit. That's easy. I don't know, and we need to, I think, prioritize the types of businesses, at least, that are desired, and the ones we're discouraging in policy here. And then that way it guides, you know, when we're looking at issuing a discretionary permit, there's a little more policy guidance.
So I would like to make one point before we proceed to some more questions, because we have about 3 people with hands up and we need to get to all of them. But I would say one issue that I have with, let's say, the way restaurants and some retail is done now in our area is that it's done within strip malls, and
right.
People come and they park, and there's absolutely no synergy. People just
Right.
go to a restaurant, eat, and leave in their car. So I think in addition to planning for more user-friendly businesses such as restaurants, small retail, et cetera, there has to be a structure which makes for better interaction between people as opposed to people coming and going in cars and never seeing each other.
Right.
So just one thought.
Yeah.
But-
Tom, what do you think about this idea of us sending out this document with the links and having the MAC, you have a land use committee as well, spend some time reviewing these policies and providing us meaningful feedback after you've looked at them, because these will trigger other thoughts and concerns like what you mentioned. And then we can come back in a future meeting to sort of have the MAC make its recommendations about listening to the community about where changes should occur here.
So my thought would be getting input from the different MAC members and putting together a kind of consensus document that would have key needs that would be very clearly spelled out. And then in a future meeting that could be brought out to the community.
Yeah.
You know, that I think would give a template for discussions.
Okay. And one of the things we'll send out, which I had here somewhere, is there's another document that was done in the current specific, there's some specific plan policies for El Sobrante from a previous document, and we can send that out to you as well.
Okay. And then I think, you know, between Edgar and I, we'd have to organize how we develop a consensus document between the whole group.
Right. Okay.
So I was thinking, John, we have a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a good time to go to those if you don't have further.
Sure. Yeah, no, this is helpful to me because look, I'm the one that has to be voting on this. And so I need to understand what it is that I want to include listening to all of you, because I'm the one translating, working with Will to sort of get these in here, and Will's listening to you as well. And we all want to get the right community input in a meaningful way.
Okay, so Mickey's had her hand up for a while. So go ahead, Mickey.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, John, to get this out to us so we could really sit with us and see what's in it. My question is about Envision 2040. Is this the plan that we want to see by 2040? And how do we address these issues now? I mean, because
They are now. Yeah, these are they're policies that would take effect as soon as we vote on them in about a year, or somewhere like that. And I think the idea is this would carry through 2040. Is that what that means, Will? So the policies would take effect now, as soon as we vote on them.
Okay, great, because like you mentioned before, we are getting these applications periodically that we're always fighting back. Like we say, we have enough of the auto shops and repair shops and different things, and we have a different vision of our town that is more community friendly. So is there a mechanism now that we can kind of slow down some of those other applications that are coming in now?
So Will, good question. So obviously these won't become official policy for whenever, in a year or so. So if, let's say, an auto use is going through the process now, what's the flexibility and discretion? And by the way, we did this with the proposed gas station, and Pastor McLean knows this, right? We had a proposal for a gas station up on the triangle, and I met with the applicant who bought the property and said, you're not going to get a liquor store, an alcohol license or sell tobacco at this site. And that affected their, they were applying for a land use permit, that affected their view of also profitability. And I said, gas station is not a preferred use. And instead they sat down and sold the property, right, to you know, for the good project that's going forward there now. So I mean, I think there's discretion. We don't have to approve these items, but so let's say there is a potential proposal for another auto use on the dam road. There's flexibility on that, right?
Current zoning and general plan, they need a use permit. So, which is a discretionary approval that can be denied by the county. And so, you know, and one of the requirements to issue a use permit is that it be consistent with the general plan. So I think that when you read the general plan guidance that is existing right now for El Sobrante, and and it actually, I think, it has some of the most of any of the communities in the existing general plan because of the effort from about a decade ago. You know, I think when you read what's in there, it's certainly, there's a certain flavor, you know, and where it's saying, look, it should be more pedestrian oriented, you know, that we should have some higher densities. We should have, you know, in the San Pablo Dam Road mixed use area, for example, you know, it does talk about that town square and everything. So, you know, planning, engineering is the science one, planning is the art one, you know, these disciplines. And I think there's a way to read this where you can say there's a clear message being sent here. It might not, you know, specifically say no auto uses, but it certainly describes the type of environment that the community desires. And auto uses typically, you know, don't fit into that. Now, there's a couple ways to deal with this. We can have policy in the profile here that says no more, or that they're discouraged. You know, I don't know if you ever want to leave the door open a little by using that word discouraged. We can also say we can have an action item to amend the zoning for El Sobrante to not allow them anymore. You know, that may be belt and suspenders. I don't know. So there are a couple of mechanisms to do it. The other thing is that while these policies aren't effective yet, we do still use them to show people this is the way things are going. Look, we've had these community meetings, and while these haven't been adopted yet, and they're not the law of the land, clearly there's a direction the community wants to go. And, you know, and I'm not talking about specific to this community or any specific use, but countywide. And we'll tell people, look, you can read this thing and get a sense of where this community is going and what they want, and whether the use that you're proposing fits in with that or not. We couldn't enforce them, but we use them to kind of guide people right now until they are adopted.
Okay, thank you so much for that response. We have a couple of questions from the audience, and so I'll just start with Alicia's question.
Thank you. So I just have a question on density. And as I'm following these maps along Appian and the Dam Road, I'm seeing, you know, depending on density, you can go from anywhere from 0 to 75, right? Obviously, you know, 0 to 30, I follow that, but I'm just curious why and how you get to a place to determine exactly low density, high density, medium density, particularly on these busier corridors. I understand as you get off the road and you're into areas that are more populated by single family homes, but when you're on the busy corridor where you have very direct access to public transit, it is relatively dense commercial right now. Why limit to say 17 to 30 when there's the potential for 75? How do you arrive at that number? I just would like to understand that.
How would we arrive at that number to designate that, or how would we arrive at that when someone comes in to build it?
How do you arrive at that number to designate? Okay, thank you actually for posing your question back at me that way. How do you arrive at that number to designate it that way? And then based off of how you pose the question back at me, yeah, what's the allowance if someone comes in with a good project in an area that you say have zoned 17 to 30, but the project is being presented for say 50? What's the conversation there?
So the first question, or the first answer is, we do still look at the scale of the community and the nature of the community. 30 units per acre, given that the existing mixed use designations allow 8 and 12, 30 is a pretty large jump. And so, and it's up to 30. It's not necessarily 30, except for the one area where it was 30 to 75. And again, that's because there's already some dense stuff there. But, we are not setting out to transform the character of these areas from something that they're not. Up to 30, El Sobrante is kind of, elements of it are rural. It's not a transit oriented development. It's not, high density as it is. So we landed on the 0 to 30 because it's the one of the mixed use designations that just seems to fit better with the character, or most appropriately with the character of the area. There are these other non-mixed use designations that are like multifamily that allow, like you said, 17 to 30. Some of that is matching what's already there. And just maybe if there's a lot next door that is vacant or underutilized, and just maybe carrying it across that lot. As I mentioned before, we do need to plan for more housing. We need to find places throughout the county for new housing. But then when someone comes in to actually build it, so they'll either conform to what that limit is, or they can always apply to amend the general plan to change it. So if it says 0 to 30, but they want to do 37, then they could apply to the county to amend the general plan to have a higher density. But we are trying to make it easier for people to build housing in the midst of this housing crisis. So we felt that increasing it from 8 or 12 or whatever up to 30 was a pretty significant benefit to people already, so that they don't have to go through a general plan amendment process. If someone wants to blow the roof off of the density, it probably is appropriate that there's another public process. It comes before the MAC, has hearings before the Planning Commission and such to change the general plan. So, but that's countywide. I mean, how we kind of look at the character of the area, we look at what's already there, we listen to what the people in the community have told us. And for El Sobrante, we heard, we'd like there to be more life along the major thoroughfares. We'd like there to be more residents along those, more businesses along those, but without overdoing it. So that's where we land. That's how we landed on the 0 to 30.
Okay, thank you. I think we can move to Matt's question.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Will. This has been really helpful. This isn't really more of a question. It's more of, I guess, gathering better input. I noticed the 1991 plan had a whole separate chapter on noise. Noise has been a discussion here tonight, and it sounds like an ongoing concern for people. But I noticed the table of contents for the current or proposed plan doesn't have a noise section. And I think we'd want to know, how can we review and give input on noise concerns specifically, especially if we're going to be raising density?
Sure. So it is in there, but it's not in the title anymore. It's in the health and safety element. So the state gives jurisdictions great latitude to organize their general plan how they want, and how is most appropriate for their community. So you only have to have the content. You don't have to have the names that's in statute. So in the health and safety element, we folded the noise element into that one. So it is there, and it's updated.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think since we are sort of running down on time and we have another presentation by the SOS group, unless there's a desire to further discuss, we can move on to the next presentation. Is that okay with everybody?
And just Tom, we'll send out to everybody the document, the profile with the policies, as well as some of the existing El Sobrante specific plan policies, to allow all of you to do some kind of review of those and come up with some kind of consensus recommendations.
All right, great. And Will, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Very informative.
Thank you, Will.
Amy.
So the next item is a presentation by Safe Organized Spaces, Richmond, Daniel Barth.
Yes, thank you very much. I am Daniel Barth, the Executive Director of Safe Organized Spaces Richmond, SOS Richmond. And I know a few of you at the table. We're slowly trying to bring ourselves into neighborhoods across the greater Richmond area. Of course, the name SOS Richmond means that we are focusing on the places in Richmond specifically, but I would like to see us very much West County wide. And what is we? We are unhoused folks themselves getting jobs, employed in a workforce empowerment model that gets folks from where they are at, and we know where folks are at. If we were to overlay the unhoused community, we would see quite a map of encampments. And of course, they're always moving around, and they're moving around because they're always being moved, and for reasons of public safety, of course. But then there's the public safety aspect of folks not having a place. And I'm thinking about the general plan and the housing element. And then there's within one of the appendices of the housing element, if it is applied in the county's general plan, would be the affirming the furthering of fair housing, or AFFH. And within that very long analysis of what could be steps to be taken to further fair housing would be, how do we address our unhoused community? And so there's this disparity between the elevation of the need to address homelessness and the actual planning that we have put into place to solve or to provide solutions. And the county provides a pretty robust system at this point. COVID brought us the opportunity to get some folks indoors. Project Room Key led to Project Home Key. And so for a significant portion of the population, we've been able to see folks go from living in abject lack of safety, lack of stability, lack of security, to being in the housing settings that Project Room Key and Project Home Key have provided us, something that we have never seen before. I've run homeless shelters in the past for a quarter century, and we know what they used to look like, and now they don't look like that anymore, because we recognize, not only for COVID, but really for dignity, folks need to have a little bit of their own space. And as we also know, people struggle to find themselves to fit within some of those spaces that sometimes get offered to them. They usually get offered during the time of greatest distress, when folks are being abated or being evicted from the encampments where they live. And so usually folks do not choose to opt into that system. So is there alternative ways to do things? And one of the alternatives is the model, I believe, that we are setting up. So if we hire 20 folks, maybe in the future it'll be 40 folks and 60 who are straight out of encampments, and they are unhoused still. They might come to work with a shopping cart and their dog, with all their belongings with them, as it was in the beginning. And then over time, as folks are stabilized through the activity of being employed, having a sense of purpose, having a routine that's being developed, changing their personal motivations, their personal behaviors, their life choices, right? That the survival is not now the only option, but there is the steps that can be taken forward. We're finding that that empowerment approach leads to folks getting more hours, being able to afford housing, being able to sustain that housing, and then ultimately getting jobs in the mainstream, in our mainstream workforce. And that process, of course, will take years. None of this happens overnight. And that's why, as heroic as our county's mobile outreach, our homeless mobile outreach is, and I sing the praises every single day in my mind, in my heart, about how they reach out to folks and try to bring the services, to bring that person to the services. Well, sometimes it takes bringing the services to the person. And I want to give you one quick example, and I know I don't have much time. So right now, before, and you can actually tell me how much time I do have, because this is my introductory visit to you. I've not been to the El Sobrante MAC before, so I don't expect to have much time, and I can come back at your pleasure, and we can have other discussions, which ultimately would lead to the affirming, the furthering of fair housing for unhoused folks, which would inform the housing element and the general plan, because that now we are attending to the problem somewhat to the degree that the problem impacts our lives and impacts their lives by having no place to go. So yeah, if we don't have much time, that's fine. I just put my name, an outreach number in the chat. That new 510-806 is a brand new number that we're using now, that if you have an issue that you see in your neighborhood, or that you see an individual who is in need, it might be that we don't wait for the county services to come to them. We might come to them with our services that are much, let's say, more accessible and easier to reach, because it's very incremental that they're provided. And I want to give, so just to finish my thought, that 806-8650 is, you call us, leave a message, we will respond. Now, of course, to the extent that we have the capacity, and of course, because we are funded by the city of Richmond mostly at this point, I'm trying to seek the funding, especially or in the beginning now with code enforcement, so that we might be able to do some work together with the county code enforcement, so that we might in the future be able to do more service in the unincorporated area. We do so in unincorporated North Richmond, and we would like to do more with you. So that, where did it go? And some folks are already having to jump off. So I will be very quick and give you one example of what's working. There's my email address, and there's my personal phone number. Anytime, please email or call me. Here's the one example I want to share. So we wanted to get into El Sobrante. It wasn't hard for us because several of our staff got out of the encampments right behind Raley's down the ravine over there and next to the San Pablo Creek as it comes up to El Portal. So it was no stretch for us to realize, well, what we need to do is we need to start by bringing our showers. We have a mobile shower program that employs folks to provide mobile hygiene services. We brought it to the El Sobrante Church of Christ. We bring it there every Thursday. In fact, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, if you choose to swing through, come visit us. By doing by bringing the showers there, folks aren't automatically going to come. So what we did, because we know the encampments, and unless you will go visit through there, you wouldn't know. And I haven't actually done this, but my folks who have lived in there go through the encampments, one tent after another, one structure after another, up and down the creek, and they know where folks are spread out. They bring them by shuttle to the showers. And by bringing them to the showers, we're now engaging. That outreach has led to engagement, a service that's provided that is immediately needed. Sometimes the first time someone's getting a shower in months, and sometimes in years. And then from there, we're now going into those encampments, giving them bags, bringing the trash out, trying to prevent Caltrans from having to do that, trying to prevent the cities of the unincorporated code enforcement or the city of San Pablo or the city of Richmond to have to come in there. And now we're beginning to create the sense of cooperation. And that's our mission. Housed, that's you and me, and unhoused, that's the folks in the encampments, now working together to bring jobs, encampment services, outreach, and eventually safe living spaces. Now, safe living spaces will be provided when we, in our neighborhoods, in each neighborhood that is impacted by homelessness, where we bring that safety, security, and stability in an off-street, secure location with the supports that are necessary for folks to change their lives. And of course, jobs for those who can work is the center of that. And that's where we come in as stewards of that local area, and then stewards that deliver these services, and eventually of these safe living spaces. And I'll leave it at that because I think we're running out of time and you might have a couple of questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation, and maybe Edgar, you could distribute Mr. Barth's contact information by email. That might be a good idea. It looks like Mickey has a question.
I just wanted to thank you for coming and explaining what you're doing. I just want to give a shout out to SOS Richmond. They've been very helpful as a partner in our major cleanups when we had our Earth Day and our National Cleanup Day. We had a few of their people come out and work with us to collect the trash. It makes them better neighbors and less, less of a nuisance when we can cooperate and get their help in cleaning up these areas as well. So I'm looking forward to working with them more in the future and figuring out how we can support their or work together just to support each other's goals of having a cleaner El Sobrante and having them, since they're in our neighborhoods, having them as good partners. So thank you for coming.
And then Sue brings up a question, which is a perfect handoff. It's about collaboration. It's about us working together. It's about us really bringing our forces together. There's a great amount of respect that the county, the question is, this sounds great, but how does it mesh with the substantial services offered by the county with their Housing First programs? And again, if we can, when CORE has a question and has a solution, and we work together, and SOS staff reach out to CORE when they're ready to go seek the project room key. Now we are helping to facilitate. I see ourselves as the liaison between neighbors, public agencies, and all those public agencies. We're talking about police right next to code enforcement and abatement, and all the agencies that have to respond in that moment. Do they have the relationship with the individual, or can we establish that relationship and have ongoing relationship? We work together. And there's, I believe, a great amount of respect that we can continue to have to create the services that then further affirm the furthering of fair housing, right? It starts with working with the individuals and having that relationship. It's about relationships between neighbors and public agencies and the unhoused members so that no one feels excluded.
Thank you so much. Are there further questions for Mr. Barth? Okay, in that case, Daniel, thank you so much for your presentation. Very informative. And yeah, if there are no further questions, then I think we can move into the next items in our agenda. So it looks like there are no discussion items, i.e. development plan applications. Information reports by MAC members. Are there any? Mickey, do you have a subcommittee report for I'm having a senior moment. So
Yeah, thank you.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, okay. So we had a meeting last Wednesday. It was very good. We had a report from the illegal dumping, the I guess it's Contra Costa County Ad Hoc Committee on Illegal Dumping, and that was I'd like to make their plan more available somehow or another, that people can check out what they are planning on doing. And so that went really nicely. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to working with them. I think there was also pointed out to us that we should reach out more to conservation and development and different ways that we can work together to achieve our goals. So I won't go over the meeting. It's getting late. I just wanted to say that we are going to have a dumpster day I guess maybe Edgar will talk more about that. I don't know. Most people here know about it. November 19th, it's a dual dumpster day for El Sobrante and Rolling Wood, where we're going to have 60 cubic yards of dumpster space for people to drop off their stuff. There's a little bit of confusion on who will qualify and how do we verify the IDs of people who are going to come by with their stuff and what they will actually accept. It looks a little bit limited. But maybe I'm not sure if we're going to turn away if people come in with pallets, wood pallets, or if they come in with like a barbecue or something that they want to throw away.
We'll get all that clarified tomorrow to make sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we'll get more clarification on that. That's going to be the same day as our third Saturday cleanup. We do need volunteers, more volunteers to help with the actual dumpster day tasks that we have, which is checking IDs, loading the dumpsters, traffic and things like that. And it's good until it's from 8 until noon and or until the dumpsters are full. And there seems to be a lot of interest on Nextdoor about it. I've never had that many likes on my Nextdoor posts, and this one got a lot of them. So I know people want to know more about it, and I hope we can clarify it for them. And then also for after people drop off their stuff at those big dumpsters, we hope they'll come and help us clean up some of the streets because it is our regular third Saturday cleanup from 10 o'clock until noon, where we distribute our equipment at the library and people sign up for certain areas where they will clean up because it's an ongoing problem, and hope that we'll get people to join us, and hope that people will check out our website, keepelsobrantebeautiful.info, where we're constantly putting up our events and more information, and we should have more information, right, Chris? Will we have maybe put up the flyer that was generated by Supervisor Joya's office and Edgar, and thank you for that. And so we'll have links for that as well, and anything upcoming. I think we want to have our next meeting for the cleanup and beautification subcommittee in January, where we can outline some goals for the year. I think that would be good, and things how we want to take things to the next level, not just have our third Saturday cleanups, but maybe have some outreach to schools and organizations and churches and get them more involved and more community buy-in. And so I guess that's all I really have to say about that, unless Chris or Sue or somebody else has something else to add to what we're doing here.
Okay, Ben, thank you. Great report.
Okay.
We should have those little cards to give to people as they show up to both events for what to do with other trash and for them to give to their neighbors. I'm concerned about hazmats. People will definitely turn up with hazardous materials, and we need to be able to tell them what to do with them so that they don't.
We've been working this I've been involved with these for several years, and hazmats are not allowed.
Okay.
And so we ask people when they turn up, they have to take them away.
Okay, but we need to tell them what to do with them so they don't just dump them.
Yes.
That's where the card would come into that. If you hand the card to everybody who comes up.
Yeah, we will have our postcards there to give to every car that comes in, and we want to get those widely distributed to businesses and the neighbors around here. Maybe that would be something that could be included in every, post that, maybe not every post, but some of the posts that the newsletters that Joya's office puts out. They could have like a fun fact from each thing, or something. This post will have something about what to do with your hazardous materials, what to do. Next post, maybe electronic waste or something like that. But that's all
So-
on the postcard that we have that we'll be handing out, and it does have information and addresses of what people can do with it as well. And I'm not sure what'll happen if people come up with recyclable stuff. Maybe, what do we do with that at the dumpster day? Do we, can we set those aside and help people out with that, or just tell them to put in your blue bag
What aside now? What
with,
item?
with like recyclable stuff that we
Yeah, I
don't
mean-
want to throw in the dumpster?
Yeah, yeah, we
We
don't.
don't expect a whole lot of anyway, as we told Edgar. Otherwise, he's gonna be like, "Oh no, I wanted to give him a recycling bin, and they didn't want one."
I mean, what we can do periodically, which we've done in the past, I know we did this in North Richmond, is we actually had a dumpster day in which we had a smaller dumpster for hazardous materials or TVs or things, or recycling. So we can't do that every time, but we have arranged for things like that in the past. So we can look at that for future events. I mean, the bottom line is you have to tell people no, and they keep it in their car.
But what would be ideal, I think, would be if we would have these planned out for the year, and then be able to tell people, well, we're gonna have that in another month or 2 months. We're gonna
Yeah,
have.
and I think if you give them a card that says, here's where you take your recyclables. I mean, in fact, tell them on Saturday, the hazardous materials drop off will be open. Just give them, they're open Saturdays, so they can go directly there. Does your card have that address and their hours?
Yeah, it does, and they're already in the car with the stuff, so it's like the perfect time to give it to them. I think.
So I just got an email back from Republic, because I just emailed them tonight. And what they've said is no hazardous waste or treated wood waste, pallets should be okay.
Okay.
So pallets
That's
are
good to
fine.
know. Oh,
Is that already
okay.
on the flyer that you gave us? Because I was gonna put that online, what you gave us, but are you
Well,
able to find
it's,
that now?
it said not accepted, Chris, on that flyer. It said not accepted wood.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
Is there gonna be an update, I guess, to the flyer is my question.
but you're saying it's
I posted it, like-
treated wood. That's not accepted. But
I'm just sending an email back. Basically treated wood is not acceptable.
right.
Mhm.
Okay.
So do we have it? Oh,
My one concern is that, you know, like is the 94803 area, and we do want to keep this for the unincorporated, but I know that people are asking on Nextdoor, and we're not sure how we
So we've
don't
done
even
these
know.
for like years, and I can tell you.
You know,
This, you just have to ask people's license and look at it. And we can help identify if they live in Rollingwood, right? And there are certain streets there you can look at, we can figure that out. We'll have to give something to help you identify. You know, and for El Sobrante, I mean, at some level, while Richmond gets its own allotment of dumpsters, you know, I don't know if they've done dumpster days in El Sobrante. You know, obviously it all ends up on the street sometimes if they don't dump it. So I'm not certain how much you're going to enforce whether they live in the city or the county part of El Sobrante, and that's going to be harder for you to enforce because of the zip code, right? They're the same zip code. Rollingwood is a different zip code, as I recall. But there's only certain streets there, and you can sort of tell by looking at the street names, and we could try to help you on that. And it may be that you're not turning away people. I mean, we're publicizing it as unincorporated El Sobrante. And that's all you can do. I'm not sure you're going to be in the best position to tell people, to turn people who live in other parts of El Sobrante away. You know, practically that may be hard. Clearly, if they live in Richmond, that's not in El Sobrante, another zip code, you can just say no. You end up having to do that. And otherwise it becomes totally, you know, out of control.
yeah. Okay.
Okay,
I'll
so
try to modify meanwhile my next door post and emphasize
Oh, we'll put,
unincorporated.
we know what, we'll put something on next door too, and we'll
Okay,
figure this out tomorrow.
that'll be helpful. Thank you.
okay, all right.
Potentially like a bit of a potential issue to have somebody showing up with a big old car full of stuff and little old us having to go, sorry, you can't dump here. Have you had incidents before with people getting upset?
Yeah,
So I've worked these for 3 years and we've never really had any incidents.
Okay, all right, I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you gonna be
it's
there?
people have been pretty good. They'll say, okay, and they leave. I mean, there may be an occasional person sometimes, but yeah, it's not, it hasn't been, doesn't mean it won't be, but you sort of just have to, yeah.
Yeah.
let people know.
So are there people on this call that are going to be able to help us on dumpster day? Who will be there?
So
Anybody?
I've been at the Moose Lodge for the last, the previous 3 or 4 times that that's happened. So, I'll be there. I won't be able to lift anything because of
Right.
recent back surgery, but I can help sign people in and throw light things.
Great.
So I'll definitely be there. I don't know if Edgar, you'll be. Yeah, James
Yes, I
is
will.
always typically there, and
What's the date? What's the date again?
the 19th, 10 a.m.
No, 8 till 12.
8 till 12, I'm sorry.
8 to noon, but
It says
Chris and
10 through
I,
noon here. This is the Moose at the Moose Lodge.
what's that?
So the the Moose Lodge. Oh, I'm sorry, I got something mixed up. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, the Moose Lodge is 8 to noon or
8 to noon,
however.
that's correct.
However soon. Chris and I volunteered for the 9:15 to, to later shift. We have some people who have volunteered from the green team for the 8 o'clock. But we're just not super early people and prefer not to do that. But hopefully we'll get other people from the MAC to join us. That would be helpful.
So just one pointer that I have is sometimes people bring in things that have sharp edges and nails and stuff like that. And you just want to be really careful not to injure yourself. And, while it's good to help people, unload their stuff to move things along so that we don't have, cars stacked up, it's also very important to not get injured.
Yeah.
And also to let people unload their own cars, so we're not.
Yeah, people, but sometimes, for example, there might be a few very small, frail people who, have a car just literally loaded with stuff. And so, you basically have to help them.
Yeah.
There's always a trade-off, but
Right.
I would like to make sure that people avoid getting hurt, either by lifting something too heavy and trying to throw it over the wall of the dumpster, or, by getting themselves cut on sharp stuff.
Yeah, and we need somebody inside the dumpster to really maximize the space. Otherwise, there's makes
Yeah.
it hard to load it. So.
But these things sort themselves out and they fill pretty quickly. So.
Okay, great.
I'm thinking we could skip over agenda items because we just talked about the Moose Lodge. And we still have the obligatory public comment, 2 minutes per public commenter. Does anybody have a public comment? If the answer is no, I think we can adjourn this meeting. I think it's been very productive and informative, great speakers, and good discussions. Are we good with adjourning?